All right, we're here with Chad Withrow, Outkick, Hot Mike. I was just on set with you about a week ago, down at SEC Media Days, but you're still doing your show down the street. You're everywhere, man.
Well, I got to say that Davey Hudson, our producer, really failed you in that interview because I go and do a podcast with you, Mike, and you have a fine bourbon waiting on me when we sit down, and we do a show in a distillery and a place that's a brewery. And we've got nothing for you.
Yeah,
so
I was disappointed.
I blame Davey fully for that decision to not have that set up and ready to go. But we did go grab a beer right after, so that was fun.
Yeah, I wish they'd let us have beers here. I think wouldn't it open up the coaches and we'd get more entertaining comments, don't you think?
We definitely need like a bourbon and ball type session with some of these coaches. I just talked with Zach Arnett of Mississippi State. That is a football type guy. I think he could open up a little bit more with a little bit of bourbon. So, no, I'm with you. I think that'd be a great setup for everyone. Everyone involved would have more fun.
Right.
Let me ask you, out of all the SEC coaches now, who would you want to have a glass
that's
with?
That's a good one.
Coach O is always a safe
It would have been Mike Leach, right? That's the emeritus answer is Mike Leach of all time. Lane Kiffin would definitely be up there, but I mean, I've hung out with Lane Kiffin a couple times, and he's one of those guys. He's so smart that it's almost difficult to hang out with him in a social setting, just a little bit different, right? And he's not exactly his online persona when you're around him. I listened to Kirby Smart today. I think he'd be fun to grab drinks with. Man, it's a great question. I don't know that one name really jumps to the top of mind that would be the guy you want to grab bourbon with. So I'll go since I just saw him, and I think he's a good talker and he's got a good personality. I'll go with Kirby Smart.
So what now you got us curious. What was it like hanging out with Lane Kiffin? What can you set the scene with, if you can share any of that?
Well, just being around. I don't want to set too much of the scene, but a little bit. Just a dinner setting. He's very intelligent, and one of those guys that he's kind of on another level at times with what he's seeing and what he's thinking. And he's got a very dry sense of humor. He's hilarious on Twitter, right? Hilarious in written form. But when he gives you the quick one-liner, he's not maybe as gregarious as someone would think. That's why he comes to mind for who you'd want to grab a bourbon with, but it's not the first person I would jump to. So I think Kirby Smart is my answer, but I'll get back to you. I'll continue to think about it. Maybe I'll come up with a better answer.
So it sounds like you were at Twin Peaks. Blink if that's true.
Home of the home of the what? Like the 28-degree beer or whatever it is. Yeah, that's the perfect spot for me and Lane to hang out.
Have you picked up anything from all the interviews that maybe you were unaware of heading into SEC Media Days?
So we interviewed Gary Danielson earlier, and I asked him. I started the question by saying, "Are you on social media?" And he just said, I know exactly where this is going. And he said, yeah, I'm aware of some of the backlash, during games and that I'm an Alabama fan or I favor this team over the other one. And he gave a really good answer. He said, I'm fine. He's like, I played quarterback in the NFL. We lost a lot in Detroit. So I've heard it all. I've seen it all. And I'm not overly active on social media, so it doesn't bother me. But he said, what bothers me about that is after a game, our crew works so hard, and there's so many people involved. And he said all of them will get around and go to see the online reaction. Anybody in the truck, it's all about me, right? He said everything is negative about me. And he said I hate that once the game is over, it's people hating me and not pointing to the entire broadcast team, not pointing to anything else. But can you believe, Gary Danielson messed this name up, or that he likes Alabama more than Tennessee or whoever they're playing? That was his big takeaway from it, which was an interesting answer. I never really thought of it that way. But he was more concerned about that than anything else.
Which is kind of crazy, this being a transition year with Texas and Oklahoma and all this other stuff that's going on in the background. A lot of people forgetting about CBS final run here. So
hey, I let it off by saying, man, is this bittersweet walking around here? And he kind of laughed. He said, yeah, it's been a little weird because this is the last go-around at SEC Media Days for him. And I asked him, are you going to be the Big Ten Game of the Week voice? And he just said, well, I'm under contract with CBS, so I hope to keep calling college football. That's what I want to be doing, but I don't think they know what's going to happen with that Big Ten game. So I would assume it's going to be the same broadcast crew doing that Big Ten Game of the Week now also. But yeah, it's a different era now. And I look around at ESPN. They're laying so many people off.
Right.
We could sit and compare TV deals when it happened. Big Ten has diversified their portfolio.
Yeah.
They're everywhere now, but they're not on ESPN.
Right.
Well, SEC is only on ESPN for the most part, and ABC. But now when you look at the state of the business and where Disney is in their thoughts of ESPN and where you could be on all of those different networks, who got the better end of the deal? I would argue the Big Ten probably had the smarter deal right now because they're on a number of different platforms. Although, get back to me during college basketball season when there's not a single Big Ten game on ESPN. That's going to be a problem because that's where people go for college basketball.
Right.
Have you had to go to any kind of counseling or rehab now that Will Levis is likely the future starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans?
I've never seen a therapist. Anyone who knows me or has spent any time with me would tell you that I would need to see a therapist before. But that's one that nearly made me call a shrink and go see someone for some help. We're hosting a party. By the way, you guys are welcome to join. Tomorrow night at 6th and Peabody with Outkick. There's going to be a lot of SEC types there from 6 to 11 p.m. Parmalee, the band's going to play. DJ's going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'd love to have you guys there. We invited Will Levis to the party. So Hutton has been in contact with Will Levis. He's met him. He knows him. Met him at Topgolf, of all places, with some Titans people. And he says, like, Withrow, I'm telling you, you'd love this guy. Like, he talked about Step Brothers being his favorite movie. He's got a sense of humor that you would be attached to, that you would like. So I'll give it a chance. So if he shows up at the party, I'm willing to go up and say, look, man, no one in Nashville has been more upset about the Titans drafting you than me. I'll own it right now. But I hear you're a good dude and a funny guy. And we'll see where it goes from there. Maybe I get punched. Maybe he laughs it off. Maybe we can move on in our relationship. But of all the things the Titans needed, having to reach for a quarterback in the second round after reaching on a quarterback in the third round the year before, that was not the quarterback I wanted to see, and that was not the position more than anything else that I wanted to see.
I know this is SEC football, but I want to ask, what about Hopkins? Are you excited?
I am excited. Now, if we want to go and look at things in retrospect, I think it's easy to say, man, John Robinson should have just paid A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Because the opportunity cost of having to draft a receiver in the first round, Traylon Burks, with that trade and getting rid of A.J. Brown, combined with now 2 years, $26 million to DeAndre Hopkins, well, you should have just paid A.J. Brown, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have needed that move. But given where they were and what Rand Carthon inherited with that wide receiver room, I love it. It's a big win for Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. It's a big win for Ryan Tannehill. Because DeAndre Hopkins is their number one receiver now.
Right.
And Traylon Burks can ease into an eventual number one role as the number two guy. And with Chigakonkwo, who can do some things at tight end and be a playmaker, and then Derrick Henry, of course.
Right.
If the offensive line could just be average.
Yeah.
They were atrocious a year ago. They're going to have a pretty good offense, and we know the defense is good. So I think the Titans elevated themselves from very mid before that move to a team that I think should win the AFC South. Even with Jacksonville's improvement, I think they're a division champion. Now, what does that mean in the playoffs? Probably not much, because I'm not going to put them against those teams with great quarterbacks, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens even, but Cincinnati's another one in the AFC. It's just a brutal conference. But I do think it's a team that can win that division now, so I like the move.
I haven't heard your reaction yet to NCAA kind of going easy, depending on how you see it, for Tennessee. I just love the fact personally that all the SEC, the rest, they're just up in arms that Tennessee did not get a bowl ban and got off easy. What's your reaction to what the NCAA levied?
I think it's about the best possible scenario for Tennessee and what happened. Now, $8 million is not nothing. That's a big fine. That's the biggest fine in the history of the NCAA. So that's a steep fine, but I do like the rationale they used, and they said, I think that's basically the equivalent of the money they got from the last two bowl games, Music City Bowl and Orange Bowl. Mm-hmm. So they're saying, you played in those bowl games, you did well, fork that money over.
Yeah.
That's going to be the consequence for playing in those games. The scholarship loss is not a big deal because they've already docked themselves 16 scholarships. They'll have 2 more this year. So basically you're looking at playing with 83 instead of 85 players for the next 4 or 5 years. But, I mean, with NIL, they're going to have as many scholarship players as they want. Mm-hmm. They can go get a 3-star guy from the state of Tennessee that really wants to play for the Vols, and they could be a preferred walk-on but NIL can pay their way, and they could be on full scholarship. So I really don't think it's been that big of a penalty, but I like what they did, and I would say that about anyone. Punish those that broke the rules and got caught, and not the coaches and players moving forward. If you want to go after the university, fine with that, but I would say that about any other program, not to bowl bans to me with a coaching staff when everyone that had all the wrongdoings happen, when they got fired, doing that to Josh Heupel seems overly punitive.
Right.
So I like where the NCAA landed. I think they got creative with the fine. But, yeah, I think it's good news for Tennessee. Now Josh Heupel can come here tomorrow and say it's behind us. We don't have to answer questions about that in recruiting. We know what it is now moving forward, and that's what they've wanted since they took over in Knoxville.
That's pretty wild. I've never really thought about that, the NIL scholarship,
Yeah.
I mean, is this happening? I mean.
Well, let's put it this way. Josiah Jordan-James at Tennessee is a starter.
Right.
And has played a lot of basketball. And I think been like an honorable mention all-SEC player or third team at some point in his career. He was technically going to be a walk-on this upcoming year as a fifth-year player. Now, if you think that he's not having his school paid for in some way through NIL, then that's just one example. Now he's on scholarship because the kid who came from Harvard got homesick and left. But that's an example in basketball. But it's going to be very easy to accomplish in football as well.
And what does that do for already so much momentum with Tennessee and Heupel, and they're winning big, the fun offense? Now they have this cloud over them. Does that raise even more the ceiling for what this program can accomplish under Heupel?
I really believe that this year will define the floor for Tennessee, okay? And what I mean by that is this is their first transition from a great quarterback for that offense in Hendon Hooker to another quarterback. And it's going to show if it really matters, right? If you just get in that offense and you're okay at quarterback. Joe Milton has a chance to be better than okay, don't get me wrong. But I think now that we're transitioning between quarterbacks for Tennessee, we're going to see the floor. I think the floor is probably 8-9 wins for this program. I really do, because of that offense. Is the ceiling a national championship? That remains to be seen. I think so. I think they're a team that, with the points they're going to put up and the style they're going to play, they're going to contend for some extended playoff spots when they go to 12 teams.
Right.
So that's what I'm watching for this year. Where does Tennessee fall, or do they fall at all? Is it down from 11 wins a year ago to 9? Is it down from 11 wins to 6 or 7? This will, to me, define the floor for Tennessee. If it's 9 or 10 wins, I think you can probably pencil Tennessee in as a 9 or 10 win team with a chance to go to a playoff once it extends pretty regularly. If not, then we got to reassess.
Do you think NIL really helps? I think people assumed Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State would just dominate that as well, but I would argue Tennessee, A&M, Texas, teams that are dying, the fans that are dying to win again. I think it gives them somewhat of a competitive. It may not be sustained, but I think it gives them an advantage in the NIL world.
I do too. I think the motivation is higher there at some of those programs you mentioned. And I think that Tennessee has been on the cutting edge with the Spire group. And I'm buddies with a number of those guys, and they've done a great job, and they've been very creative. I do think that helps Tennessee, but I also think that Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State will not be outbid.
Yeah.
If they really want something to happen and it comes down to an issue of money, which I don't think that the sole issue of money it's not been as prevalent as some might think with decisions guys are making. But I do think if that was the case, then if the tie goes to the team that's won multiple national championships recently, and it's all about money, Georgia or Alabama is going to be able to bid with Tennessee and those schools also. But I do think that Tennessee being seen as a cutting-edge, top-of-the-line NIL destination with Spire Sports, I think that's helped them in all sports, not just football.
Yeah.
Well, I got to ask you, so last thing for you, Chad, really appreciate your time. You host Hot Mike. Not necessarily the hottest seat now, but who's getting fired first in the SEC? Because I feel like that's a question you love to answer.
I would say Eli Drinkwitz could be in trouble.
Yeah.
If I'm having to guess someone that if it just craters, that could be in some trouble. It's hard to define the expectation level at Missouri, though. Mm-hmm. If this was Auburn, as an example, going in, like we did last year with Brian Harsin, that it would be a very, very hot seat. But I think we're in sort of uncharted territory right now where there's not a lot of programs you can point to easily and say this is definitely going to happen. Mm-hmm. A&M would be the one.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that contract is such an albatross that you can't – I mean, they are just – that's all they can do is hope.
If Texas
that Jimbo
wins the Big
Fisher
12,
and Bobby Petrino –
that buyout's going to get paid quick.
yeah, it could. And, look, they have the money ultimately to do it, but it's still – it's a difficult situation because they put all their chips in, right?
Yeah.
I kind of think of Scott Frost in Nebraska. The thought was, man, if it doesn't work for Scott Frost here at Nebraska, who can make it work?
Right.
And where do we go from there? That's sort of the thought when they hire a guy who's won a national title and they paid him all that money in Jimbo Fisher at A&M. So I think they're in a tough spot, but I think I've talked to you about this before, Mike. I think A&M's a sleeper team in the SEC West. I think their floor is – their ceiling's very high this year for what they can accomplish. So I think everybody's gonna survive. Shockingly, everyone's going to keep their job this year.
All right. Hey, before you go, tell our audience, where can they find your work?
Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow, Outkick.com. You can watch there. Go to the YouTube page, Outkick Hot Mic. You can find us there, or the Outkick YouTube page. Follow me on Twitter at the Chad Withrow. We're on in Nashville on 94.9 The Fan FM. We're a little bit of everywhere. We're on multiple radio stations. You can find us a lot of spots. So just use the old Google machine, and you'll probably find us quickly.
All right. I appreciate you, Chad. That was great.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.